Hello and welcome to the Say Yes Movement podcast with Heather and John. Hey Heather, how's it going today?
It's going great, John. How about yourself?
For Wednesday, it is pretty fantastic. It's maybe the weather outside, not so much, but you know what? They say April showers bring late flowers, and I'm going to go on the assumption there's going to be a lot of flowers this year just based on all the rain that we've had over the last week. So yeah, I know it's fantastic, fantastic, fantastic.
I love
So
it.
I so
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I can't believe we're speaking over each other today. Last night we went to an event. You want to just share
Yes.
a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. We were at a networking event to celebrate a merger of two companies. It was amazing. But here's what was amazing to me is, many people commented that it was the first or just second event that they'd been to. And, we think the world has opened up, but really this is still feeling unnatural to people to
Mm.
be in the same vicinity. But the energy of everyone coming together, you can't recreate that in your own living room. That is for sure. So although there's lots of benefits for Zoom, what I loved about last night's event is just feeling the energy, getting connected and meeting new people and checking in on what is most important to them. And John, I don't know what you loved about the event, but that was what stood out for me a lot.
Yeah, no, you know what was amazing was coming off the elevators, walking into the space, and you hear that hum, right? Like the
Mm.
just people interacting, people connecting. That part of it was like, ooh. I've been to events like I've been to event over the last year. I think I've been to quite a few events, actually, surprisingly. But last night was different, right? There was a different type of energy. There was, people were interacting, people were mingling. It was pretty amazing. And what was really neat is, as I was like walking through the space, people would stop me and say, "Hey, do I know you from somewhere? You look really familiar." I'm like, "Ooh, are you on LinkedIn? Maybe that's maybe how you know me." So one of the things that we want to talk about today is building influence, right? How do you build influence? One of the things we talked about last week was communication. And this is one of the platforms that we use to practice our communication in terms of getting our message out there to the world. But it's also a space to build influence and brand, right? Like there was a couple of people I spoke to. They're like, I see you, but I could never do that. I'm like, the truth is, you
Mm.
could if you really wanted to, right? And you forget that everybody's experience is different of the world, right? Like not everybody wants to be out there communicating on a big platform like this. So it was amazing in terms of meeting people for the first time and having a sense of familiarity.
John,
That's
if
something
you would
that
have
happens.
asked me like before we started this, can you talk about leadership for 3 times a week and will you have unlimited content? I would have been like, I don't know what I would talk about. And literally every day I'm not looking for content. It lands on us and
Mm.
we're like, oh, this is something we're going to talk about because this is really exciting, or we've learned something new, or there's been an experience that we've had that we want to share with our audience to have the lessons come out of it. And for me, same thing, going to this event yesterday, it had me thinking, people are really resisting going back into the office.
Mm.
And of course they are. They're resisting it because they're going back to sit in an office or to sit by themselves or to not interact. So, for companies and bosses that are asking their employees to come back to work, what's the energy that you're creating to make it a different experience for people, and that connection and that collaboration is happening? And because yesterday the connection between individuals, introducing different people, checking in what they're doing, what they're working on, it was amazing to have that energy. But if we would have all just sort of gone and sat in a corner, it wouldn't have been that same energy. So that's happening in the workplace where people are going in, they're just sitting down, they're sitting back to back meetings on Zoom while they're in the office. That's not going to create that energy and that connection. But that individual, looking someone in the eye, making them feel like a human being and just saying, wow, that's amazing that you're doing that or working on that, and having that collaboration, I think is so key. And trust is built on
Mm.
those foundational blocks.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I know the two of us, we ran into a gentleman who's like super. He came out and he said, "I love my job."
Yes, and he's in banking. So we were like, whoa, dude, we love you. Who are you?
So, just to see that, like, you don't see that type of excitement over video, like, and you could see, like, his whole body was, so I know there was synchronicity between what he was saying and what he was feeling, because it was we talk about body language being 65 to 80% of what you say. And he was explosive with his body in terms of what he was saying. It was just,
Yes.
I love my job. I get to do this, and I really get to play around with this. And nothing's new. Everything's different every day, and I'm challenged, and I really get to help and support people. And
Yes.
that part was like, wow. Like,
what stood out for me for him? He was super curious. He had all this excitement, and then he shared something really personal with us that he just got married.
Yeah.
And then he turned to you, John, and he asked for some marriage advice, which I thought was just the most beautiful thing. And curiosity is so attractive, and so it builds energy around someone that really makes them look vulnerable and human, and that connection. Like, I wanted to talk to him all night because of his curiosity and his love for what he does to make an impact. So, as leaders, we often wonder what's that quality that we should exude that's going to make us more impactful and more influential. And curiosity is definitely one of those things. Ask more questions, look people in the eye, get curious about what their success patterns are. And I mean, he was asking you from a man to a man, how do I make sure that I stay in this honeymoon phase? And it was so adorable and so cute. But I can see that he's actually asking that for his marriage. But he's also asking that for life. He's also asking that for his clients. How do I keep this honeymoon phase of keeping my clients happy? How do I do that for my team at work? I know that the advice you gave him, he's going to implement in all aspects of his life, not just in his honeymoon and his marriage. So, curiosity, I think, is definitely a leadership quality as a leader that I would love to see more of.
Yeah, no, and it's simple. It's just asking questions and listening. But I mean, like, really listening, not listening where you're on your phone, asking the questions, waiting for a response, but listening and then building on that. And I think that's one of the things that we both did in that conversation. As he was sharing, we would ask a question and he would go even deeper. You go through that process. The curiosity got us. It kind of led. What do you do? I don't even think we started with, what do you do for work? What do you do exactly? And it went down the path where, it ends up happening. It's a normal process that people just want to share more, right? The deeper you get into the conversation, the more questions, the more intricate your questions with what they're saying gets you deeper into their minds, into their hearts, into what's happening in their lives. Creates a deeper connection. I know I'm going to be connecting with him today on LinkedIn and just having and kicking off a conversation with him. But it was, just to see that energy again is like, oh man, like it was so exciting.
It really was. And, people as new leaders, I know you coach this as well, John, getting in front of people to build that trust in whatever way makes sense to you is so, so important. And so, as you're wondering, like, why am I going back to the office? That's a really good question. And you're going back to the office to build that trust with your team. But the only way to do that is to interact with your team. So, if you're going back to the office to sit in an office, then you're losing out on a really good opportunity. There's a show on Netflix, and I just love this. I'll find the name of it, but it's around your mindset explained, or how to use your mind. And what it does is it shows random pictures of people. And then at the end of it, it says, who do you trust more? And then it shows all of the pictures. And guess what happens? Everyone picks the same person. And it's not because they're more trustworthy looking, because when they did this randomizer of all of these faces, they showed one person's face, I think 1 second more than everyone else's. And so, because our brain understands that pattern, and that 1 second more of that one person everyone chooses that person as the most trustworthy person. So, if you're sitting behind a desk and not getting out there as a leader, then you're losing the opportunity to build that trust, because the more we can be vulnerable, the more we can be curious, the more we can talk about things that are going on, the more trust we're building. So, it is not a secret sauce formula. It is literally get in front of people to build that trust.
Yeah, no, and it takes me back to when I was in the office and I had a large team. One of my routines, first thing in the morning before I sat down and started going at it, on my computer, is I would do a round and just actually say good morning to everybody, acknowledge everybody. I know you had a practice that was similar as well, just to say hi. Hey, I'm here. You're here. Fantastic. I love it. Good morning. It's great to have you here. Like, it's something as simple as that.
Yes.
It creates better engagement. It creates better connection. People feel, acknowledged. And I think that's a big part of it. Like, coming into work, going heads down at your desk doesn't do anything for you.
No.
And really, what does it take, right? It takes less time than you waiting for a coffee at Tim Hortons or Starbucks just to go around the room and saying good morning to everybody. And even, we do it typically on a Monday. Sometimes I've seen leaders go, they've done that on a Monday morning where, how was your weekend? They have a little chit chat and then they kick off their day. But I'd like, do it every day. Like, if you're going to be in
I did it
office,
multiple times in the day because I needed to get out of the box. I needed to get out of the office. I needed time in between. So, I do miss that, working more from home. So when I'm at events, I'm making sure I'm maximizing the time and being as curious as possible with people, because that's what those events are made for. And it's giving that energy as a gift to other people means you get it back. So I came home, I was like full of beans and wanted to talk about it, and yeah, it was great. So
yes, no, and what's really interesting is this is also applicable online, right? There's nothing that stops you first thing in the morning just doing. I know a lot of people are either on Teams or Slack or some sort of chatting tool. You can say good morning to your whole team. Yeah. Like, there's nothing that stops you from making that connection. Yes, more importantly, when you're in the office, you want to make sure you can, I forget who says it. I don't know if it's Bob Proctor or one of the greats. They say, you want to see the whites of their eyeballs, right? Like, you want to make sure you have that eye-to-eye contact. And what I've seen has happened over the last 3 years is people are challenged with just looking people in the eye.
Yeah.
Like, I even saw it yesterday with a few people. I don't know if you noticed it, but even when you're interacting, there were people who were just not making eye contact. They were keeping their head down, say, yeah, and they were having, like, what kind of connection are you creating when you're not keeping eye contact with somebody? So,
well, I have an advantage in that, John, and here's a fun fact that you might not even be aware of. So I'm only 5 feet tall, and so eye contact with me is not face on to face on. So I'm a little bit less in their space. But because they have to look down and I have to look up, my chin is up. So I'm actually in that open communication. My shoulders are back, my chin is up, because I'm most of the time looking up at people to have a conversation. So I'm forcing them by my own body language of saying I'm open to a conversation to actually make eye contact with me. So I believe my height is at an advantage, because I am saying to them with all of my body, hey, I want to have a conversation with you. Conversely, when I'm done with the conversation, or if I disconnect by accident and my chin comes down, they can't make eye contact with me because their head's up here and my head's up here, and so it's like a wall, right? So I've learned through my body language how to make someone know that I want to have a conversation with them. So it's interesting to see that. And of course, last night it was really prevalent in because we're standing, we were all standing, so I know my height is very challenging in that way. I'm only 5 feet tall. That's just, I can't grow. So I've learned to adapt. And so tall people have the same sort of challenge, but the opposite is that it's hard to make eye contact because they're sort of looking at the tops of everyone's head. So just, think about what's your advantage? And everyone has their own advantage. And how do you use that to your advantage for communication? I could have definitely said to myself, oh, I'm so short, no one's going to look at me, and just faded into the background. But no, I want to be the tallest 5 foot person in the room, right, John? That's what you always tell me.
Some of the tallest people I know are 5 feet tall. So yeah, no,
Exactly.
absolutely. And I didn't think of it like that. Like, listen, there were some really tall people in the room. Like, I'm not 5 feet, but I'm not six something. And I was looking around, I was like, wow, there's like some really tall people, some really tall people in the room, which is great. But you're right, leverage what you have, right? Leverage what's in front of you already. Don't deviate. You can't be upset about what you don't have. You got to just deal with what you do have. And you turn something like being 5 foot tall into a superpower, right? Like that, it gives you the ability to create presence, right? Like
Yes.
you show up and it's like, whew, I'm here. Oh, and the angels sing, the doors, the choirs, and all that stuff. There's nothing that stops you. So it's not your heights, it's not your physical attributes. It's who you are inside as a person that really speaks, to everybody else around you. I was watching just recently a special with Michelle Obama and Oprah. Let the light shine, right? So the light's inside of you that just needs to, share into the world, and that's there, right? Like that doesn't go away. Like you can have that at any time. Right?
Yeah.
Like, so
it's a choice. It's a choice for sure.
Choice. Yeah. And, the other part of it, and I want to speak to, is just, the perspective that you're bringing into work, into those type of settings, is this is an opportunity to connect and grow. Right. I could fall back. I could, stay in the corner and not connect with anybody, or I could just, I'm going to try to figure out where I have 3 things in common with the people around me. Actually, and that's one of the things that I thought about as I was speaking to people. What are the 3 things? I'm going to look for the 3 things that we have in common. And the majority of people in the room, they were coaches and executive coaches. So that was an easy one. That was a given. But just trying to find other common things, right?
Yeah.
And we all have a minimum of 3 things in common if you really look for it. And I know, even for those that are listening on the call right now, I know that I have at least 3 things in common with you. Number one, we're all connected either on the same social platform, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook, but we have that connection. We're all connected.
That's right.
And I think it's something that we forget about, as we go through the, I think we've forgotten that over the last 3.5 years. Like, what do we have in common, right? Like, if we're part of the same group, we're part of the same community, we have connection. We're already connected. So it's just going deeper into those conversations.
Melanie has said that her advantages are smile. Absolutely. A smile that is your invitation through nonverbal that you're open for a conversation, and it says it indicates what your mood is, and smiling is just it's so fun to do. It's great energy to do that. And then Felicia, yes, I didn't know we were the same height. So when we see each other in person, we'll see, we'll make sure that we make that eye contact, but our necks won't hurt when we do that, which is fantastic. And yes, use your smile, use your body, use all of the nonverbal communication to build that trust, especially in an environment that is, people are nervous or uncomfortable. If you're thinking, oh, I feel a little bit uncomfortable, everyone else is feeling exactly the same way. So as soon as you think, oh, well, I'm not the only person, I bet you that's feeling that way, I wonder who I can make feel comfortable in this situation by being curious. My motto of positively impacting 5 people a day, every single day of the rest of my life, is such an easy way to ensure that I'm being curious, that I'm smiling, that I'm being open and looking for those opportunities. And last night, lots of them came very easily. On other days, I have to actually go find those moments and make sure that I'm positively impacting 5 people a day. And why do I do that, John? Because when I positively impact 5 people, that ripple effect gets created, and I'm absorbing energy that is giving back to the world. So how do I stay plenished as a leader? I make sure that I'm always, always, always looking for those positive impacts that we can do.
Yeah. And sorry, somebody else just popped in here from LinkedIn saying, I had to overcome the eye contact obstacle, having been a very shy person until my mid-20s. Yeah, no, listen, I'm with you. I was like that too. I struggled with eye contact initially. You know, when I was first getting started, first getting into the workplace, it wasn't something actually that I even grew up with, right? Like we are the results and the outcomes of the people that we associate with and hang out with, right? So in my youth, I struggled with that, and it was something that I had to develop over time. And I'm so glad that you got to that point where you're able to overcome it, because there's something that's so deep. You know, you got to make sure your eye contact isn't uncomfortable. Like there's a weird type of too much eye contact type of situation. But it has to be just enough that creates a connection.
We should probably do a whole episode on creepy eye contact.
We should.
All the women know exactly what I'm talking about, but that's a whole nother conversation, John, that we could have.
But, you know, it creates, you know, I'm so glad that you're able to do that. Sorry, I don't know your name, but, you know, you figured it out in your mid-20s, and it's something that, you know, once you learn something, and this is a motto that I tell a lot of people, once you learn something, you can't forget it. You already know. So sometimes you need to remind yourself that you already know it, but you never forget it. And I'm sure it's a skill and it's ability that served you well up until now, and it's going to continue to serve you in the future as well. So, no, thank you for sharing that. It's, you know, it's hard, right? Like, you know, as you're going through it, but yeah, no, eye contact, even connecting on camera here, right? Like one of the things that we both focus on is we both look at the camera. We're not looking at the screen to make eye contact with all of you. All right, so we are at time. That's crazy. So Heather, what's our big takeaway for today?
Today, it's building trust, and you know, how do you share your energy and get curious with someone? So find those 3 things in common and ask some questions, and not, you know, start with the basic questions like, you know, what's your goal, what's your impact? Just, you know, think about questions that you want to ask, and not just the surface ones, but the ones that will get that connection made for you guys. And it can be everything and anything. You know, do you have a pet? Do you have a hobby? Do you have a big goal? And find that common ground. So let's positively impact as many people as possible and create that ripple effect.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Heather. So remember, when you shift your mindset, you shift your life. That is it for us on this episode of the Say Yes Movement podcast. Wishing you all a great one. Take care.